Knox, did you have any sort of closing, wrapping up thoughts before we move on to our next discussion?
Well, just to say really a huge thanks to all of you. I've learned a lot from these sessions, and I think the African diaspora is vital. And I would say, despite all the challenges we've had this year, I'm still optimistic, and I believe for Africa and the diaspora, the future is now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those closing thoughts. And I want to thank once again our 4 speakers for your valuable insights and for pushing us forward in our discussion. We had another speaker at one point who said, talk is really important, but so is action. And I think with that perfect transition, we're going to hear from participants from the LEAD Academy who are putting their thoughts and the discussions and are trying to offer their ideas on and the recommendations of what are things that we need to do. And so for that, we'll have Anthony Obute, who's going to introduce the presentation.
A very big thank you, Laura, for the generous introduction of the LEAD Academy. It feels you've already said all that needs to be said, and then I don't have to introduce it all over again. Yeah, but maybe for the purpose of emphasis, I would, of course, maybe want to mention something real quick about the whole idea. Even as we have this conversation, Black diaspora, I overheard one of the presenters mention something about maybe toning down the question around racism and post-colonial ideas. But I think we also have to come to terms with a place of privilege. And we must understand that the world is highly classified. The experience of a Black professor, if I have to use a term, the experience of a Black professor within the European system will be completely different from the experience of a random everyday African person who has just arrived here yesterday. And somehow we have to keep these issues on the front burner, not necessarily because we don't have other things to discuss, but I don't think that the question around social justice can ever be overemphasized. So, like I also mentioned yesterday, the conversation we had at the LEAD Academy, it's also like a two-pronged approach. Here we have experts and policymakers, people in places of power and authority, and also allowing people who are on the ground in Africa, at the grassroots level, to engage the issues, like identify the major challenges you have within your environment. Now, there are also issues of investors in Africa who also like treating natives in a very, very terrible manner, a manner reminiscent of the colonial violence that people experience. We can, from all around the country, you can talk about them. So I think we have to balance this asymmetrical sort of relationship where people can be on a good footing. With that said, today we have 2 groups from the LEAD Academy project, and they will be talking about the question around social justice and discrimination, and then also the important question about revisiting our educational system, revisiting the curriculum, because there seems to be this whole rush to reproduce a particular group of people. And at the end of the day, there is neither fulfillment, there is neither job, and then sort of there's a de-emphasis, we de-emphasize the question around entrepreneurship and people being able to turn their passion into a productive venture. So today I'm very pleased to introduce 2 of the participants from the LEAD Africa International Academy, Isaac Olorun-Timilehin and Azia Sholanke. So they will be presenting the reports from their group work, and you have 5 minutes to do this. So I will hand over the virtual platform to Isaac. Isaac, are you there?
Sorry.
Okay. Or do we move on to Asia
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you so much for introducing me. Good afternoon, everyone. It's such an honor and a privilege to be here. As Anthony has rightly introduced, my name is Shalanke Asia, and I am the representative for Group 2. So, a few weeks ago, Lead International Africa actually put together vibrant young leaders from Africa or leaders from African descent to actually come together to talk about issues pertaining to Africa and to brainstorm and look for solutions. So before I move forward, thank you so much, International, for the opportunity and the privilege. So we were grouped into teams, we were grouped into groups, and I am representing Group 2, and our group is actually talking about educational and economic disadvantages. So we had issues surrounding these themes, and I'm talking about poverty, unemployment, limited access to education, high inflation rate, lack of opportunities. So I will start with education. Please permit me to rush through the issues. For education, before we talk about education, we need to really understand what we mean by education, the inception of education. Education was rightly given its due name from the Latin word educare, which means to nourish, to care, to nurture people. So it's basically the holistic approach to building up an individual. But can we actually fully and truly say that African educational system is holistic? Can we say that we can produce students, graduates, and put them in the society, and they can be able to be leaders, they can be able to function, they have this level playing ground with their mates from other parts of the world? I'm sure that I'm going to be able to speak for a lot of people when I say no. And it is largely due to our curriculum. Our curriculum is not flexible. Probably before, we are teaching people to be doctors, to be lawyers, and that is what was working for them. But with the reality on ground today, we really need to move away from that thought and actually move into the thought of we need to produce people that can be leaders, people that can actually solve real-time solutions, and people that can actually move the continent forward. And that is when we're talking about the informal sectors, people using their skills, people using their talent, people nurturing their talents. Sadly, Africa's curriculum does not nurture talent. So we need to start looking at how to be more flexible with our curriculum. Also, one particular thing that came out of our deliberations from our group is the fact that we cannot take away that we are a different group of people. We have people with special needs. We have neurotypical people. And from these people, from this category of people, there are some of them that has the potential to become forward-thinking people, to become leaders. Their thoughts, the processes that which they think can actually move the continent forward. But because they cannot communicate with other people of the society, apart from just people that are knowledgeable in sign language or Braille, it is really difficult. We need to start thinking of how to incorporate Braille and sign language in our curriculum. It is very important, such that people of special needs can walk into any room and communicate with everybody or anybody because people understand them. At this point, we are isolating them from the society. There are a lot of them, there are a lot among them that actually have the potential to become leaders. So we need to actually think about how to incorporate Braille. Also, we need to talk about the fact that these days, people actually go into teaching simply because they really do not have job, or we really lack talent in the teaching profession in Africa generally. And we need to start giving credibility to the profession. The profession is slowly losing its credibility, if not entirely lost its credibility. We need to start talking about how our teachers are passionate about teaching, our teachers are passionate about bringing forth the next generation of people, how they can be incorporated into the society. We need to look for ways how to weed out teachers that are just going to teach to collect salaries. We really don't need those particular people in the educational system anymore. So now I'm going to talk about poverty. Africa as a nation is truly blessed, no doubt, but let's talk about how we haven't maximized. We need to talk about how we haven't maximized our potential. And I'm going to touch on two issues for poverty. I'm going to touch on financial literacy. Everybody needs to know how money moves in Africa. And that is one of the reasons why there is huge gap between the rich and the poor. The social gap keeps widening every day because this knowledge is out there, obviously, but this knowledge, the financial knowledge, is limited to some particular people. We need to start teaching the people in the rural area, the people that don't have those access to financial literacy, how money moves, how money works, stock, invention, and everything like that. Then we talk about unemployment, and unemployment, we are talking about entrepreneurship, capacity building. We need to move away from everybody going to schools to be doctors and to be lawyers and to be engineers. We need to start moving into the sectors. And how can we do that? We need to actually have the government invest in the sectors that brings much more people together. We are talking about the manufacturing sector, so that when there's investment in this particular sector, a whole lot of people can benefit from it compared to the other sectors. We also need to start looking on how we can maximize skills. There are some people that their skills, their passion are underutilized simply because they don't have the resources to process them. We also need to start looking about how to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Asia. And now we'll move over to Isaac.
So, good day, everyone. At the Lead Academy, our group worked on the issue of discrimination and social injustice towards people of African descent and Africans. The issues we've identified against Black people and people of African descent are mainly police brutality and violence. And right from the colonial era till now, Black people have been subjected to excessive force from the police, disproportionate checks, and even just yesterday in Paris, France, a Black music producer, Michael Zekla, was beaten by the police for over 7 minutes, and the police actually charged them for violence and for attacking them. But unfortunately, should I say, there was a CCTV footage that showed that it was not so, and then they had to drop the charges and free him. So these things are still happening in 2020 to Black people, and it shows that we are not safe. So there's also the case of times these cases are not given coverage by the mainstream media, and it shows that there's a lot of there's a long way for the Black people to do. And considering the NSAS protest in Nigeria, this shows that this situation or issue is affecting us in Africa and in the diaspora. So it's a very big challenge that we have to work towards solving. And there's also the case of institutionalized racism and systemic racism, whereby there are barriers towards African in healthcare, in education, in housing, in accessing basic services. The design of our cities does not favor Black people, especially in Europe, where they are pushed towards where there are little or no opportunities. So we identified some solutions during the academy when we were brainstorming. So can you please just jump to the next slide? In Germany, we discovered that racism is not spoken of, and even the German Interior Minister in June refused to allow, vetoed against an investigation into racism in the German police. So this shows that there's still a deep-rooted culture of white supremacy and Black subjugation. And towards the solution, we have identified some short-term solutions towards addressing these problems. So due to this, all the subjugation, there is the case of poverty and lack of resources, which pushes us towards being the third class and not having economic power. But we have identified some solutions. So some solutions we've identified is empowering our communities. Talking about race, when we talk about issues like this, we are empowered to take actions, we are empowered to request for accountability, and we suggested the use of body cameras by the police to always film the incidences. Then we talked about the use of social media towards giving these cases coverage, provision of shelters, provision of free calls for people who are in trouble, maybe with the police, or who are caged in a situation that they need help to break out from. So there's another problem of police accountability. Who polices the police? A lot of time cases are reported, but the police officers are always let go because they claim there's a lack of evidence. So there's need for an external body also to, in the long term, I want to move to the next slide. In the long term, we need to come up with a framework that will promote accountability in the police force. We need to change the police culture, the police training, the training police officers receive recruitment, done recruitment to screen out white supremacists. And there's a need to break the barriers that white supremacists have developed into the system by making things easier for Black people. For example, employing more Black people in the police, and removing all these age-long barriers that prevent Black people from accessing education, healthcare, housing, and other economic activities. There's a need to also decolonize our education system, especially in the basic school and also in the tertiary education. There's a need to decolonize a lot of myths, a lot of fallacies, a lot of lies that have been retold and seem to be truth, but they are not. We need to change all this, and we need to do a database mapping. We need to have like a database report over time where we can have evidence that this and this has happened, because a lot of time they claim it's just an isolated case, but it's not so. It's happening, and a lot of cases are not actually reported, or some people have been unfortunate to be arrested and jailed. For example, the guy in France yesterday, Michael Zekla, he was already being charged for attacking police officers, and if not for the evidence that was found, he might have been charged and imprisoned. So there's a whole lot more to do, and we need to change the narrative. We need to tell the truth. We need to tell our stories. So these are some of the recommendations we're able to come up with. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Isaac, and thank you very much, Isaiah, for that wonderful presentation. I think it's quite clear from what you've said that there's a need for us to revisit our academic curriculum. There is also the need to, shed some light on gender-based violence that is also highly underrepresented across the world. And I think the question around police brutality cuts across board. It's not just we cannot restrict this debate to a particular group of people. It's all over the place. And I think you've given us a food for thought. Who polices the police? And when you think about the End SARS protest, and you think about remember that some of the SARS units were actually trained by Britain, again, we'll find out this whole idea about the colonial continuity, the continuity to the colonial violence. So I think we're looking forward to having a very lovely conversation next year. I saw here on the chat session that someone is asking, how do we share this? How do we get involved in this whole project? I would please direct you to go to myleadafrica.org and then keep an eye out for the next time we'll have an announcement out for Lead Africa Academy, and then we can continue this conversation. Thank you very much, Timmy. Thank you very much to the team for putting all of this together. And then I would give up the mic again to Laura or Njeri.